I don't have a whole lot planned today because I had already told you guys that we were gonna kind of see if we could cinch up any remaining questions or curiosities related to what we discussed over a number of weeks with finances, where I started, and and then of course everything that Wes went through was very much practically oriented to some possible ways to be using your money right now. So I have, and you guys, I know Niles took a picture. I think I have a picture too of that. Remember, we took a picture of the things that we were curious about that we wrote on the board. So you might look, if you can find that, look that up, and then let's just see if there's any lingering things. Did you have that too, Isaac?
I might have had it. I think Niles.
I was just thinking maybe there's a way for us to put it up there just so that everybody can look at it and see whether or not we still have any questions there. But some major takeaways that we wanted to have is really more about perspective than the practical. I know there was a lot of conversation in among you guys. Some folks came to me asking questions about, well, should I use my money in this way or should I do it in that way, and what are you doing, and those kind of things, which are relevant for sure, but not necessarily the overall point of the class. I know that there was some of the things that Wes advised. I think primarily was the IUL, or what's that called?
Yes.
IUL. Some of you guys were really hesitant about, and that's okay too. I think that if you still have lingering questions there, Wes is someone who can help facilitate that for you. I think that there's probably some thought or concern among some of you that because he was suggesting that to you, that it was somehow a benefit to him, and almost like it was a sales pitch or something. But I'll tell you, there probably is a very minor benefit to him, but the benefit is to you overall. So people do make a living helping other people. There is such a thing. So that would be kind of like going into the doctor and being like, well, I can't really trust the advice you give me because you're getting paid. That's ridiculous. People go to school, they take time, and they invest their life in something that is meant to be useful to others. So that should encourage us maybe to think a little bit differently. And I'm not saying that as a pro for IUL. I'm just saying you have someone that's experienced in finances, they probably have some insight there. Whether they have a little bit of gain from the time of their life that they took to learn those things and then present it to you is not the main point. So if that was where your hesitation was, then maybe revisit that again and again. Not because I'm saying that's something you should do. My personal view of that is that should be part of something that you might do. Okay. And so there is no in the volatile does everybody know what volatile means? It means it's really shaky. It could go up, it could go down, it could disappear. That's volatility. Okay. The financial structure of our world is volatile. Okay. There are many things that could come and go very quickly. And so and that's not really ever not been the case. So what we do with the resources that we currently have, whether they are large or small, whatever it is, doesn't need to be put all in one place or thinking that I'm going to do this thing and it's going to be this huge benefit for me. You should be thinking this is from a savings and investment standpoint, in how to spread those things out. This is what the concept that he was talking about, hedging, leveraging, is about spreading the risk out. And so the way we like to think is, I want to do it all in this one thing that's going to blow up and make me all kinds of benefits, profits, whatever. And that's not the way it works. That's not a healthy way of thinking about money at all. One of the basic principles that I want you to come away with is the mindset that is, I want you guys to develop a mindset that sees something that money is a tool. Or maybe put it another way, money becomes an employee for you and it works for you. That's what you need to learn how to do. And so if you're not clear about how that works, then that should be something that there's continued conversation about, either with your parents, with myself, or with someone who has more knowledge about that. The key is that your time and your investment in the time and the money that you earn, most of you still, even though we've gone through a class, whatever else, and this is not a judgment, but most of us are probably still thinking, I'm working for money. And that is a mindset that rarely changes for people until they don't live anymore. Because we think, well, I need it for this, I need it for that, I need it to have this, I need to have that, I need to go here, I need it to do that. Okay, that's working for money. And that is a mindset of poverty. Because everything in your life is focused on this idea that if you attain enough of it, then you will receive what you think you want or need or where you want to go or wherever that is. And that is a completely upside down, very unbeneficial, very poor way to look at money. Money needs to be used as a tool. It is something that you are to master, not that is to be a master over you. Period. And the things that we pursue, where we spend our money, those kinds of things, mostly the way we think about money will determine the way that we end up using it. Okay, so the other things that we talked about early on were tithe and its place in a community of God's people, its purpose, its history, and other things. So if there are lingering questions around that, then this is a good time to ask. And those are not things that you should be shy about because they're very important in life, especially as it relates to spiritual life. And that can seem like an enigma to many people. So most people who even have learned good principle of tithe still don't really understand it very well. They still think along the lines of this is something that was mine and that I'm giving to this cause or purpose, and therefore I should have some understanding of how it's used and for what and to whom and for what end. And that's not really what tithe is about at all. And so if there are questions that are there, well, good grief, you should ask them. So it is much better to ask something than to presume something to be true that is not true. And proliferate information that is in your own mind, not beneficial to yourself and potentially not to others. Justin?
I just maybe to help get the ball rolling. I remember obviously not being in the church and then coming into church and hearing the tithe.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that was initially a question that I had was why does the tithe have to come to to the storehouse or that place? Why couldn't you just do good with your money and just do your own thing? So you have any thoughts along those lines? What's the distinction or the difference between gathering it in the storehouse versus it being just used for good things?
I think the primary, and I mean first principle there is that it doesn't belong to you. So you don't get to decide how it's used. Period. No questions asked. Now that sounds very strange coming from someone who's a leader in a community and who oversees tithe, but I also was in the exact same position myself too, with the exact same mindset. And actually maybe even a little further extended from that same way of thinking, because I was in ministry and I was, having to raise support for provision, because I was a missionary. So when I was working, the tenure that I did with Mission Possible and everything else, I had to raise support. So I had to write letters to people and ask for support and sit down and talk with people about those things and talk with other people who were raising support, And so when I went into a church and then they had this conversation about tithe, in my ignorance, I thought that very thing. Like, not only I'm not disagreeing with tithe, I just think that I'm already tithing my life, right? Because I'm having to ask other people for money And I don't have the privilege that other people do to do anything they want with their money because I don't even earn money, right? So my life is a tithe. And then not only that, I work with people who I give money to all the time. Shouldn't that be my tithe? So I very personally went through that struggle of trying to figure out what is this really for. And so, and before I was ever in a place to even be a part of seeing, because when the Lord began to bring some specific order in our community through raising up Brother Emmanuel as someone who was literally carrying an order from above, and he began to talk about tithe and other things. Oh man, did it really rub me wrong? I did it, but it never settled in me. And in fact, I did it very not begrudgingly at all. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I know I need to do this. And then it just so happened that when we made the transition between, well, when we first moved over to the beach property, but just prior to that, we were in Austin for a little bit, and I was there for a couple weeks, and we were moving out of a house here and having to put stuff in storage here, and we couldn't move there yet, and we were going to go back and live there for a few months, and like everything was just a mess, and like I had already put money into the down payment for the property, and like we were just broke, and I was actually going to go back and work in Austin and trying to do some other things, and I had forgotten to pay, to send money to the tithe for our community for a couple months, and Emmanuel called me out on it so sharp and hard, and I just thought, and he just said, you really need to. Basically, he said, you haven't done this, and I want to know why. And he said, I don't even want you to answer. I want you to think about why, and then we can talk about it. And so I did, and I realized, man, my heart and my mind about this. Because I knew what was right, even from a spiritual standpoint. And I just wasn't living to the standard that I knew was truth. And one of the other things that Emmanuel always held with tithe, talk about it, he was like, where this goes or what is done with this is no one's business. Not that they can't know, not that, like it's some hidden thing that no one can see, but that they have no say in it. This is money that belongs to the Lord and to no one else. And the way that it goes, what it goes to, what it is used for, is discerned by the Lord Himself showing that. Okay? There are some other principles of the tithe that work in the order of a community of God's people. Okay? And the apostles and Jesus Himself, even in His parables, were very explicit about that. Okay? And He said it when He sent His own disciples out. He said, the worker is worthy of his wage. Okay? And what He was indicating, what the apostles indicated, it was that not by any means that was their primary provision, but that in order to come into alignment with the order of God's house, those things would work that way. And so, for instance, you guys pay a little bit of money, $50 a month, toward the culture center for everything that we do here, and that covers a lot of things. But it's not just logistical costs. Do you think Justin's making a living off of the couple $100 a month? Maybe less than that goes to him for teaching here? Do you think he's making a living on that? So if there's anything in your heart that says, well, Justin's just here for the money. Wow, that's really interesting to me. I don't think that any of you think that, but I'm just saying, I've had people think that way. When I worked with young boys in the programs that I worked with in California, and they were abused and those things, they would say that was one of their big digs to the staff that worked there. You're just here for a paycheck. And that was always something really hard to parse out with them, because the reality is you were getting paid to be there, and that was even potentially a living wage. But it was not the reason for it. Maybe. Not for everyone. And so, those things are very interesting. The fact of the matter is God ordained a means by which all that he has, and we receive a portion of something that belongs to God, and then we freely offer that back. That's the nature of the tithe, but there's a spiritual portion of that as well, which is a contribution to the order of God's kingdom. Has nothing to do with money, guys. Has nothing to do with money. So if you are stuck, even right now, you who are in this room, if you are stuck with some of these unhealthy ideals, and it's okay if you are, I'm not judging you, but I would like for you to communicate with myself or John and be relieved from tithing. I don't want you to tithe. If there is even one part of your mind or your heart that thinks that myself or John or that other people in this community are trying to receive some benefit from your tithe, please do not tithe anymore. Please. Because you are bringing the accusation of the enemy upon yourself. When Abraham tithed to Melchizedek, he was paying tribute to something that he believed was a righteous way of life. That is the nature of the tithe. And yes, I know that your money is your time that you worked for. And it's not for me. The question is, do you pay tribute to? That's your life. That's your time. That's your effort. And what are you paying tribute to? Your savings? Your car? Your stuff? Your future? Do you have a future without God? If you think so, man, you need to maybe take a different course in your life. I'm not accusing any of you of this. I'm saying these are the types of very invasive and pervasive thinking that can enter into the hearts and minds of God's people and cause deep division in our own hearts. It's not good. Be healed from those things. And that's why when we have questions, curiosities, concerns, there's nothing wrong with any of that. But you need to come to a place where you want to understand. How do you know if you have a heart that has a desire to understand? Well, you seek, you query, you become curious. You don't hide those things in your heart. You don't say those things to others in such a way so as someone may think to question the motive of those that God has placed in your midst as an appointment in your life. That's how Abraham saw Melchizedek. And it was Abram's response and his tribute to that kingdom and that ruler, that order of life. That was God's indicator. Oh, now I see what Abram really desires. I'm going to make a covenant. So the contribution of his life became the evidence of his desire for a better way. I hope you guys can make the connection here, because it's not a connection. That is what tithing is. And that's why being good stewards of our finances, of our time, of our relationships, that we don't have other things rule over us in the same way that money should not rule you. Neither should other people's preferences in life. Neither should your own preferences in life. Neither should the cravings of your stomach rule over you. Stewardship is about stewardship in life. Finances are a really good barometer or litmus test as to how you think about those things. Historically speaking, in the last 20 years, in small communities, when I've been in this small community and have had a touch on some others in small churches and otherwise, you want to know one thing that really brings up a lot of trouble? Tithing. Well, you will find out what people's hearts are really quick when you touch that little almighty dollar. And in fact, this wasn't a new thing. When it came to taxes, temple taxes, Caesar's taxes, all those things, same arguments, same trouble. And in fact, that's how the Pharisees intended to fully trap Jesus, is because they perceived that the tributes to Caesar were beyond the measure that they should be, and that they were used for unrighteousness. And Jesus called them right on the carpet about that very issue and said, let's see how you think about this. They thought they had him trapped. He actually drew a line of demarcation that they'd never even thought of. And what did he do? He picked up that coin and he looked on it and he said, whose image is on this coin? Caesar. And he said, well, then give Caesar what belongs to him, but give God what belongs to him. That's everything, guys. As my brother John reminds me consistently, God loves a cheerful giver. Any one of you can go to John at any time of the day. You can email him, you can call him, and you can say, can I have the latest tithe report? And you can see exactly how that money is used. Exactly how it's used. Every penny of it. I have never in my life met anyone who keeps a closer account. You could take every single penny that you guys give and everybody in this community gives, and you can 0 to 0, 1 to 1, see exactly where it goes. And you can do that probably for the last 10 years, maybe more, maybe more. Not 1 cent has not been accounted for. And not 1 cent has been used in any way that God has not directed. And if you want to test on that, then I encourage you to do it. You should do that. You should sit down with John and go through those things with him. Because I want your heart to have a clear conscience about it. My conscience is perfectly clear over it. And my concern for you is not necessarily the conscience issue. It's that I want you to know that when we give tribute to God in the order of his house, then we also come under the covering of the function of that house. That's the purpose of the tithe in God's community. Does that make sense to you guys? Justin, does that answer your question? Do you have any other question related to that?
No, I think that was really helpful. I think in many ways I was tripped up. The concept of the tithe is always difficult. Monies are always
It's very
hard. But to understand it from the perspective of, the Bible says he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. That perspective of God owning everything, and then really learning to orient that it is giving back to God, which is really a trust thing. I know for me, looking back, I think that had everything to do with the culture I was brought up in. Not having a fatherly understanding of that give and take, that provision that is made for the function of his house. So I think that's a really helpful.
Well, that's a very prolific thought. Like you guys may or may not know, but when we bought the Joyce Cafe, there were people that went onto the internet, onto Reddit, Facebook, and other places, and said that the people that bought it are from Texas and they used church money to buy this stuff. They used church money to buy the beach. They used church money to buy grannies. And actually, that's something that that my family has dealt with a lot, because even before my dad started ministry, he worked very hard, in the businesses that he ran. And people didn't understand how someone could be successful in business and still be in a ministry and not overlap the two. But it was actually the very opposite. My father, your grandfather, and a senior and elder to most of you personally in relationship, is one of the most giving people that I've ever met in my life. And he doesn't do it with God's money. He does it with his own. And everything that he has done, just to be clear, when he traded properties for Whiskey Creek, when he traded properties for grannies, when he traded properties for other things, not 1 penny of any of those properties or any of those purchases here had anything to do, not even 1% of money related to Mission Possible. Not even one. Those were things that those were investments that he made wisely over 20 years before Mission Possible ever existed. And then he used those things to benefit our community. So he took what he earned, which was beyond the tithe. You want to talk about a tithe? How about giving the majority of what you've worked for in your life to God and to purposes that, there are things in life and in understanding of the scriptures and things that he and I disagree on, but his heart has always been open to support you guys, really. He wants those opportunities. And he has not let certain differences keep him from being able to be used as an instrument of God and all the efforts and the labors of his life to be a benefit to you. And that is, I want to reiterate, there are things that he doesn't agree with. But I want you to see the foundation of God's love and perspective there. And I want you to honor it, not just in that person, but I want you to find this as a principle about giving. It's a beautiful thing. And it will exponentially expand what you are willing to give over to God. Like the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. God can do far more with what you think you have than what you think you can do. I promise. He doesn't have boundaries. And he doesn't put the same limitations on people that we do. Doesn't mean his righteous standard changes. And it doesn't mean the truth about what he's going to do in life and with his people changes either. But God is gracious. He is merciful. He is quick to forgive. He is slow to anger. And he is full of love. And so should we be. We should, even when we have differences with people, we should be able to see and joyfully receive the goodness of God through them nonetheless, and to them nonetheless. Now, if we had some kind of question like that in our own midst, in our own community, we can't resolve that within our own community and come to a place of peace and harmony and understanding and commitment. Do you think you're going to be able to do that in the world? Do you think you're going to be able to steward well and be a lead, an example of good stewardship to others in the world? Maybe not. So that's why I brought the issue of tithe up, because it's a lot more pervasive than we think. It actually has a lot more to do with the way we think than we realize. And it has a lot more to do with the way that we steward our time, our relationships, money, our possessions, all of those things than we realize. It has a very long-reaching effect on that. Did you bring that up where you could see if we've gone through?
No, I couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it?
I found it.
Yeah? Anything we're missing? We've got 10 minutes or so.
First one with tithe.
Oh, good.
And what to do with savings, which we already covered. Cash or loan. How to invest. Why does money matter? What is a good steward? How to face financial anxiety. Credit cards. Vehicle.
Okay. I like the why does money matter. Jane, I want to ask you, do you feel like you have any settlement there in that original question? And if so, please expound a little bit. That's an excellent question. It really is.
A difficult topic for me.
Yeah? So do you feel like you don't have resolve with it yet?
No.
Okay, that's fine. It's not a bad place to be. I would have hoped that there could be some but let me just sow some other seeds for thought, not like answers. Why does money matter? Money matters because, and it's very connected to what we were just talking about. God put man into creation to steward. No, I do not think that Adam and Eve had little bags of gold that they carried around and traded things. But they were stewards. God's primary purpose for man in creating him in such a way that he could be seen and heard and smelled, some of us more than others. He was in the flesh. That's the point. Was so that God could be seen through his way, primarily of ruling and stewardship. That's why money matters. That is the most fundamental reason why money matters. Now, if we want to get a little more existential and say, why does the dollar bill matter? Well, it doesn't much. It's just fiat currency. So, like that arena of conversation, I can totally say, I don't know what to tell you. But in the arena of stewardship and responsibility, it's everything. Because it was God's allotment to man to steward right. So it matters not because of its fiat existence. It matters because it is a vessel of responsibility in life. So how we look at it, how we treat it, how we use it, whether or not we bend our knee to it, or if we master it, those things are what matter. That's the aspect of what matters. How much you have doesn't matter. How little you have doesn't matter. What you do with what you have and why you do what you do with what you have matters. So that is, in my understanding, why money matters. So that may or not be an answer to, I don't think you really even have a question there so much as a communication that to you, money defined in a certain way doesn't matter at all. And actually, I think that's going to be a great benefit to your life. But I also see that you have separated it so much from yourself that you may not even want to be a good steward of it. And that's where I think there could be some growth, because you have such a wonderful advantage already of not caring about it. And so the not caring is from the mammon standpoint, like what the world perceives its value of. But to learn its value in accordance to and in parallel to the stewardship and responsibility that God will be placing in your life, then it should matter. Justin?
Yeah, something that both you and Brother Emmanuel had shared with me pretty early on, and we weren't even talking about money, was the concept of the economy of God.
Yeah.
And whenever you hear that word economy, you automatically think about money.
Money.
But really it's the operation and the order in which things go.
Yeah.
If God has an economy that's separate and apart from the finances, things like finances certainly fall into the order and the operation. And that was really helpful for me in a lot of ways, where we weren't intentionally talking about money at all. Then I'm going, oh, okay. That really oriented me in a way of like, just I think understanding again a lot of like the household of God and how it operates and what it's meant to look like, and what is the benefit of it, in a way that separated me from both growing up in a secular place and then from the religion aspect of tithes and all the other stuff. That was really helpful.
Reminds me of this because it's just a direct reference to that economy, and we can finish with this since we're going over or going to our time. Isaiah 55. Coming from 54, where there's a great blessing declared for Zion, that is the people of God. Isaiah 55:1 says, "Ho!" I like this version. I haven't seen that one in a while. That's good stuff. Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you who have no money, Come, buy, and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money, without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you. Okay, this is the description of what God's currency is. What is the currency of God? He just said covenant. Covenant is God's currency, not man. That's why it should never rule over you. You can't have both. You can't love one and still love the other. But you can love one and rule over the other. If you love money, it will rule over you. The love of money is the root of all evil. But if you love God, the covenants of God, the purposes of God, then you will rule over those things. You'll be good. What does that mean? You're going to be a righteous steward of it. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you. That's the currency, according to the faithful mercies shown to David. Read that chapter. I'm going to finish there. Read on Isaiah 55. Yes, sir.
If we're closing up, I can ask you personally, so that's fine.
Go
It
ahead.
was related to the topic though.
Yeah, go ahead.
My recent struggle with that question and with what you are describing is how to balance being a good steward with. I don't like money or anything about it. And the good steward analogy has been what has inspired me to care about it and pursue things with Wes and try to set all that up.
Sure.
And I don't know how to engage in that in a healthy way that doesn't like make me a miserable person.
Yeah.
Because every time I think about money, I want to slam my head into the wall.
Yeah.
Like I despise.
Here's what I suggest.
engaging in it.
Here's what I suggest. Don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Do it with your dad. Do it with myself. Talk about it. You see, here's the thing. Money to us is very taboo. Okay, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to. No, actually, I think that I don't want to talk about it in a certain way so as to highlight some and say that they're better than others, but we have some very wise stewards in our midst. And I want you to all be wise stewards. The evidence of that wisdom is not merely by dollars. It is through decisions and through a practice and perspective of what controls the way we do things. Many people are driven by what they can afford. Very few have a master that governs what they do. It's a totally different process. Even if you become financially successful, that will not mean you're successful in your heart, in your relationships, in your life. That's why one of the discussions that I really wanted to have with you guys, and I think we've had bits and pieces of it, but I can shortly maybe share some of that because, you know, we work most of our work, especially the jobs that you guys do on hourly wage and other things like that, seem very like short-ended. Like this is in a sense, this isn't going anywhere. But I'm glad that is kind of the question that you might think of, because my question in return would be, where do you want to go? What is it that you're pursuing? A higher wage? A better position? A better title? If that's the case, well, that's not necessarily something evil. Higher wage, nothing wrong with that. A higher position, well, there's not really intrinsically anything wrong with that either. But why? For what? Many people want to be doctors and lawyers. What do you think the primary reason for that is? Money. They're higher paying jobs. Now we live in a modern society, technologically modern society, where if there are certain, Matt, you can probably help me more, certain job positions that are kind of a automatic higher wage. I don't know what those variations and differentiations are. But some people really what they're doing is because they're pursuing a higher wage, a greater earning standpoint. And that's fine. There's actually nothing wrong with that. But the question is, why do you want it? And the only answer that most people can give is because I need a better home, a bigger home, a newer car, better clothes, more food, I want vacation, I want a better retirement. Anything else? I want my kids to go to better schools. I want my kids to have shinier teeth. I want all of those things, guys. Not any one of them, there's not anything wrong with any one of those, but they are all fully connected and based in this world, in this life, and not beyond it. The reality is, someone can work for $20 an hour or whatever the living wage of the day is. Okay, I know that changes, but you can work for basics of living and be a good steward of your money and still achieve more than anyone, probably anyone, who works those other jobs. A lot of things they don't tell you about, for instance, a doctor or a lawyer, is that probably 90% of the more of the people who go that route in profession have $500,000 or $1 million of debt in school, college payments by the time that they get their degree finished. And they work the first 10 to 15 years of their life to pay off that debt. So let's just think about this in terms of a life situation. Who's newly college age? Benji, how old are you now? 18. Perfect college age. So Benji starts right now. How long is the average doctorate from day one?
Residency, 12 years.
Okay. 8 years of education, 4 years of residency. So now Benji's how old? Huh?
30.
He's 30 years old. How many of you hope to have potentially started be married and potentially maybe have started a family by the time that you're 30? Yeah? Okay, but he hasn't even started day one of paying off that $1 million debt. So what's Benji going to have to do? Let's say that he got married in residency and that he already has 2 children that are 2 and 3 years old, and he's 30. My children were older than that. My first 2 children were older than that when I was 30. But let's just say that he's got a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old at the age of 30, and he just finished his residency. Now what's he have to do to pay off his $1 million debt? Work. Yeah. How much does he have to work? Anybody know? What's the average work week for a doctor? Probably more hours than you want.
About 60, certainly.
I would say so. 60 hours a week. Okay, so let's do some math here. You guys help me out. 60 hours a week times 52. Or what's the average work? Let's assume that he still gets vacation. So that's how many? How many weeks?
I just call it 50.
Yeah, 50 weeks. So what's 50 times 60? 3,000 hours a year. Is he working those hours? What are his children doing? Where's his wife? What life are they living? Does he have to sleep still? Yeah. So he's not with them then either. Okay, so let's take another average hours. and let's say 7 hours of sleep times, we're gonna have to go full 52 weeks. So 7 hours of sleep times 365. How many hours is that?
7 times
365.
2,500.
So now we're up to nearly 6,000 hours. Okay. Yeah. First of all, you're working more hours than you sleep, and that's true for a doctor, just so you know. So let me tell you, how much money it was worth not being able to raise your family. You probably have them in a nice house. Your wife probably drives a nice car, and your children would probably sit in the best car seats that money can buy. They're safe. But where's dad? Or where's mom if mom wanted to be the doctor? What if mom has to work too for whatever reason? What if they say, oh, we got a good plan. We'll both work so that we can pay off this debt, and then I'll have to work less. And so, Matt, help me out again. Sorry. How many years is it going to take to pay off that $1 million debt? Do you think, approximately?
Frank, my brother-in-law, 20.
20 years. So how old is Benji now?
50.
He's 50. This is not a joke. Sorry. You don't have to feel bad for making it or for laughing, but this is not a joke. He's 50 years old. How old are his kids?
23 and 22.
They're adults. Their childhood is gone. Their adolescence is gone. They've gone through high school. They've already made the major decisions in their life about college. And guess what? They're probably going to make the same decisions he did. Where's the generation, guys? Who's carrying the culture? Is it really worth it? Are dollar bills really worth that? No, but let's come back to this scenario, and this we will finish with. You make 20 bucks an hour. You steward your money well. You live with people you know. You work with people you love. You raise people, friends, family, children together. You resolve issues. You're in the home. Your children can participate with you. They get to see you live your life. You get to see them grow. Which one was worth more? Those are literally the decisions you're making when you're pursuing certain things, when you think about stewardship, when you think about money in a certain way. You really need to decide what drives you. That was my heart in this class. I want you to be good stewards of your life. I don't want any of you to be limited in anything. It'd be wonderful if you made millions and millions of dollars. That'd be great. I don't care. I hope that you can be a righteous steward of it. Or maybe you never make much at all, but you live such a beautiful life. And people know you. And you're able to invest yourself in others because you haven't given your whole life away to chasing an idea that literally doesn't exist. We said this before. There are those who have attained that level of success and they literally take their own lives. Many people. Because the more they pursued it, the more empty they became. The more they realized it didn't provide anything for them and no relationships. They missed their child's life. Look at Elon Musk right now, one of the richest men in the world. And what did he say about his son? Well, the left got his brain. You know what got that young boy's brain? An absent father. An absent father. And he's out trying to save the world. But he lost his son. How many generations have tried to do something beyond what they've been given? Have lost contentment and tried to pursue something that seems so noble. But they lost the most important thing in life. Don't be that people. That's the lost generations of Christianity. They pursue an ideal. and they lose the life right in front of them. We've said this over and over, even today. You guys, because you haven't had that experience and you yet, some of it, and thankfully, many of you haven't had the experience and won't. That's wonderful. I hope that your children don't. But we have something very unique in this community. And it's not that it cannot be found or developed in other places and other times. That's not the point. My point is something that I've said to you guys recently many times, that you need to learn how to be a good steward of where you are, who you're with, what you have, and what you've been given. God will be faithful to move you where He has ordained in His sovereign will for you to be. Please put your trust there, or learn how to put your trust there. Then you will be found to be a good and faithful steward. Well done, my good and faithful steward. You served my purposes. You brought them forward. That's what I want to hear. I can't take it with me, no matter how successful it is. And what I leave may only destroy what's behind me. That's been the story of most generational wealth. The culture of God's house is by far more valuable than anything humans have ever handled before. It is the treasure in the field. It is the pearl of great price. And it is worth more than everything else combined. If you have trouble in your heart knowing whether that is true, that's okay. Lay down and take your troubles to Jesus. Let Him minister to you there. Seek to find peace and truth in that reality. He will give it to you. It may take time, but it is worth the quest to find that kind of peace in life. I love you guys. Bless you. We're going to close there. All right. Niles, do us a favor. Close us up in prayer.
Dear Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for what you're showing us when we gather here. I pray that I could be a better steward. I pray that I am smart and to honor you with my decisions regarding finances. Amen.
Amen. All right.